Bottas ended up giving the finger to Russell. Russell ended up smacking him around the head. Like, it was just like, guys, calm down.
Is there a curse on Italian Grand Prix?
Hi guys, welcome back to On the Chicane. Today we're going to be talking about the Imola Grand Prix, which was just insane.
It was an intense race, so insane.
Like, I don't even know what, obviously I do know where to start because the start of that race was brilliant, but so much happened. So much happened.
63 laps of absolute craziness.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, just insane. So anyway, we had obviously the championship battle, which is between Max and Hamilton. So far this year, it looks like it's going to be between them two. So Verstappen started P3 today, with his teammate Perez P2 and Hamilton P1. And it just all went to shit, really. A little bit.
You took the word out of my mouth. I was like, oh, should we say shit? But it did. It went to shit. I think the start of the race was already going to be an interesting thing because of the rain. So yesterday when they were in quali, it was dry, and then they all qualified in like great positions. You know, Hamilton's first, Perez is second, Verstappen probably not where he wanted to be, but still up there. And then that whole strategy of whatever they were all planning, Mercedes, Red Bull, all got changed today because of the wet, because of the rain. Yeah. So yeah, they started on intermediate tires, which had an interesting effect down to like the first few corners, with Verstappen getting straight in there, didn't he? He like literally just jumped up the middle and was away straight away, like taking over Perez and Hamilton.
Yeah, it was great. The first, it was the second corner actually where he gained the lead, and he just really forced Hamilton wide. And I just think his drive straight from the get-go was just so good. And then when they said that like the stewards are potentially going to be investigating this, I was like, this just takes all the fun out of racing. But I'm so glad they didn't like decide to investigate that any further, because I think Verstappen pulled off a really great move there and forced Hamilton to actually fight. And I just think, Verstappen for me today was brilliant. He's not my favorite driver, as we all know, but yeah, he was brilliant. I think just so good.
Definitely. And then he obviously Lewis was then on the back foot because his front wing was damaged. And I was quite surprised actually that when he did pit, the first pit, they didn't change the front wing because they were like obviously not wanting to lose time. So they just left the front wing as it was and changed his tires to the slicks. So then I was really surprised because I was thinking, oh shit, he's going to be on the slick tires but losing time because of this front wing. And then obviously he kind of got himself into that little spin, he went off track into the gravel, and so many people had gone off track by then at that point, but he managed to somehow pull himself out of the barrier a little bit by reversing and get back onto track, which I just thought was like so lucky. You know, everybody else is like spinning off and hitting the barriers and then or spinning off and then not being able to really get themselves back, and he managed to do it. So kudos to him, I guess, but a lot of luck, I think.
Yeah, I think it's always Hamilton who has these kind of situations where something goes wrong or something's not looking quite right, and then he manages to pull himself out of it, and it's great to see, but also just a bit boring because I'm like, can you just for once have a DNF? I don't remember the last time he actually did have a DNF. Sorry, but it just makes it a bit more exciting. Like, I know that he's obviously going to be far ahead in the championship and it's going to be a really close battle, but because we know that, I'm like, let me see something where you actually don't recover, you know. So
do you not think that is amazing that he was able to pull himself out of the barriers?
No, I do. I think it,
and then fight. Like, I feel like you know, no one else can really take this fight to Verstappen, and Verstappen's the only person who can take the fight to Hamilton. So having them both on track is like the best thing for the race.
I mean,
Otherwise, you're just going to
yeah.
have Verstappen doing what Hamilton always does, which is like leading from 10 miles ahead and nobody being able to do anything about it.
Well, that being said, that is what happened to Verstappen in the end, isn't it? Because he did end up leading the race and having a solo race by himself miles ahead. But I do think you're right. I think obviously it's nice to see a bit of challenging going on. And I do think Hamilton is just always one of those drivers who's very lucky, because it's always him that just manages to get himself out of these situations. But also, he got extremely lucky under that red flag situation, because being able to lap himself,
right,
like that's just I
feel
don't know.
like something was shining down on him today, because that is mega luck.
Yeah.
Nobody else would ever get into that position where you've gone from, you know, you've gone from first place back to, I think he was in like 11th or 12th, I think at the time, 9th. So you've gone all the way back, and then he'd also been lapped. So that was, I think that was the key thing that a lot of people may not have picked up on, is that he had been lapped. So even if they had continued to go on, he wouldn't have ever caught up to where the like Lando Norris was, Leclerc was, because he was already so far behind by like, how a lap is like a minute and a bit. So in the safety car allowing all of those cars to unlap themselves so they queued up in the pits, and then it allowed them to drive around once and join the back of the queue. And what that meant is that he went from being a minute and a half away from the front to being like 9 seconds away from the front. And if you give Hamilton a 9 second like differential between like where you are and where somebody else is, he's gonna fight for that. He's going up there. So I just think like that was crazy, and just that was ridiculously lucky. I don't think anybody else has ever been that lucky in Formula. Tell me about another driver who has been that lucky in any situation, because I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. But should we talk just for a few seconds about why the race was red flagged, like Bottas and Russell?
Yes, that incident was insane. So basically, Russell was trying to overtake Bottas. Also, when would you have ever thought that a Williams would be trying to overtake a Mercedes? Sorry, but
that does not have a good look on Bottas. I'm sorry.
It really doesn't. Yeah. So Russell's trying to overtake Bottas. I think this was like for the points. So they were like towards the end, I think like 9-10 or something like that. And Russell's going down the racing line, I think, but what was it? He ended up going, like his tire went into the grass or something, and
yeah, they were alongside each other, and then what it looks like so far is that kind of as they were both, so this was a high speed straight, so they're both going super fast, and as they're driving, and Russell's actually pulling up alongside him, and potentially about to overtake, but let's be real, he might not have actually had that power to overtake, but he's pulling up alongside him, and Bottas may have just flinched ever so slightly to start to block the racing line. And what that did was, as he was coming up, Russell then kind of went sideways as well in that same motion, and he went onto the grass a little bit, and that just, you know, spun him out. He hit Bottas then spun into the wall. So it's one of those things where as a steward, I mean, I'm not as versed, I guess, in the actual technical details of how you're allowed to protect your racing line, but like, how do you decide who's most at fault in that situation when they're literally like alongside each other just battling?
This is the thing, like so many people afterwards, like I was following it all on Twitter, and so many people were saying it's not actually anyone's fault. Like Russell's trying to overtake, Bottas didn't really do anything, like they were both just caught in a really unfortunate situation. But obviously they both blamed each other, and then Bottas ended up giving the finger to Russell. Russell ended up smacking him around the head. Like it was just like, guys, calm down. But
definitely, I do feel like Russell shouldn't have hit Bottas around the head, just because I think in that situation you both just crash into a wall, and tempers are running high, but thank God that you're both alive, because you know Imola's obviously, or just any race in general, Imola's claimed lives before, and you know any race in general is always dangerous. So the first thought for both drivers should firstly be like, thank God we're both alive. Then when you get back to the paddock, if you want to beat the shit out of each other, go for it. But like for him to go over in that moment, maybe he did check if Bottas was okay, but like the first thing they're doing is arguing. Like that's a bit crazy and a bit childish.
I don't know. It was intense and funny to watch, to be honest. But that whole incident in itself, I think we'd still need to catch up and see who actually is at fault there, because for me at the start I was like, that was Ross's fault, and then they showed us again the replay, I think from Raikkonen's point of view or someone.
Yeah, they did.
And then seeing it from there, you're like, actually you can't really tell who is at fault. Like I think they're both just trying to race, which at the end of the day is what we're here for. So I don't know if you can really like pin the blame on anyone for this. It was just a very difficult and tough situation, but fortunately they both walked away from it.
I think, just it really depends on what the mentality and what the intention was. Like if they're doing something that causes another driver to be unsafe, then yeah, of course there's blame. But if they are just both racing and there's no intention to cause, like to shove someone off and cause an accident, then you can't really say anything. But one of the things that jumped to my mind was actually, is there a curse on Italian Grand Prix? Because, you know, the races last year, the ones that had the red flags was actually like Monza and Mugello, as well as Bahrain, obviously. But of the races that were red flagged in the last year, now 3 of them have been Italian Grand Prix. And before that, we hadn't had any red flags in years. Like, I'm just wondering why these Italian circuits are in a position that have lots of crashes and end up having red flag races.
Maybe it's a general Ferrari curse. Like, you know how Ferrari are kind of not doing that great at the moment. Maybe it's just like a general Italian Ferrari kind of situation where, I don't know.
What, they're throwing judge on everybody else so that everybody else's car starts crashing out. I mean, they do pretty well afterwards because, you know, Leclerc finished in 3rd and Sainz finished in 4th. Leclerc finished in 4th and Sainz finished in 5th. So it did work out to their benefit.
I mean, yeah, it did. But, you know, I don't know. I was so happy to see that Ferrari finish, by the way. I think, okay, so after obviously that whole situation happened, that was like midway through the race. So that was like lap 34, I believe.
Yeah.
And then obviously we got back to racing and it was a pretty steady race from then on. But then obviously the last few laps, like the grid positioning was great. It was Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris. No, sorry, Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Sainz, Ricciardo. They were the top 5 for like ages, and then obviously Hamilton gained and whatever. But I was like, this is brilliant. Like all the Ferraris and all the McLarens in the top, racing obviously a Red Bull, which, you know, Red Bull, he would have got away anyway, so he wasn't really in this kind of race. But I thought that was so great and so tight, and I really wanted to see more of them kind of defending their positions against Hamilton. Obviously I know he's in a Mercedes, so it's going to be hard to defend yourself, but I think Sainz did a really good job, and so did Norris in defending off Hamilton.
Definitely.
But I do think Leclerc and Ricciardo kind of gave away too easily.
I think I was a little bit disappointed in Ricciardo today, to be honest. I think overall, you know, he started and finished more or less in the same position. I think he may have started 5th and finished 6th, but he started and finished more or less in the same position. And I think in a race like today, where everybody else seemed to really capitalize on all of the things that were happening on track, I just wonder if we were to just solely look at his race. I don't really know where he ended up, you know, after the restart and things. But I just think that, you know, he needs to start capitalizing on all of this stuff that's happening. Like Norris was up there, Norris was in. He was like, cool, you guys are gonna, you know, get penalty points, you guys are gonna go off, you guys are gonna do all this stuff, I'm gonna get in there and get up to the top. And that's what he did, and he positioned himself so well throughout this whole race to get up to 2nd. And I just feel like a little bit disappointed that like Ricciardo didn't do the same thing.
Yeah, I do agree with that, to be honest. I think Ricciardo didn't really make the most of his race today, which is disappointing considering he's one of my top drivers. If you haven't
Same.
seen our driver video yet, by the way, our driver rankings video, you should go check that out.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think all things considered, Ricciardo really should have put in a bit more of a fight, and he didn't. So I agree, I am a little bit disappointed, especially considering how well his rookie teammate did.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I do think that at the end of the day, that was a brilliant performance from Leclerc and Norris. I feel like Leclerc's not really spoken about enough at the moment. I feel like people kind of just brush over him, but he did really well to qualify fourth yesterday, and then today again, like after putting in quite a solid fight, he finished fourth. So being
Yeah.
able to maintain his position, considering the year that Ferrari had last year, I think he's doing really well. Like,
I think he is, but in the same vein, Sainz gained he gained maybe I think 7 places by the end. He started off about around ninth or 10th,
mm,
and he made it at one point up to third, and then finish in fifth. So I think when you have the comparison of like how someone's race went, Sainz did so much better that you then do kind of forget that Leclerc also did well. And I think it's a similar thing with Lando, with Norris and Ricciardo. You know, Norris did so well that you do kind of forget about Ricciardo. The only reason I even brought up Ricciardo is because I paid attention to where he started and then inevitably where he finished. So yeah, I think Norris and Sainz, the younger drivers are pulling all the punches at the moment.
yeah, no, they really are, and I'm really happy for Norris to get his second podium in Formula One. I do think he really deserved that, and he did do really well. So yeah, I think that was a good race there. But was there any other drivers that kind of stuck out for you?
Yeah, so I got like my biggest winners and then I've got my biggest losers. So I think my biggest winners was definitely Lando. He made it up to second, and I was happy that Hamilton overtook him because it shows Hamilton's prowess. But like at the same time, if he had maintained that position to the end, I would have equally have been happy for him. Like Mariam just said, if you haven't watched our driver rankings, I have nothing against Lando. I think he's a good driver and he's just a solid driver. So I don't mind when he does well. Sainz, he did quite well. And even Raikkonen made it onto my list because he
Yeah,
made it up into ninth,
he did really well
gaining
today.
up 7 places. So he made it into the points in the Alfa Romeo when they started off near the back of the pack. So he made the most of his race as well. And then obviously Hamilton, just making the best out of a bad situation. I can tell that he felt really shitty about himself after he messed up. So being able to fight back, that's really great. Who are your biggest winners?
I think it's the two people that we've just spoken about, Norris and Leclerc.
Yeah.
I am obviously such a Leclerc fangirl. But also Norris, like for a rookie, he's really showing the team what he's got. And I think it's a little bit embarrassing for Ricciardo. But I think we all expected a bit more from him.
Yeah.
But also, you're in a new car, you're in a new team. It can't be easy.
Mm,
So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and hope that he kind of picks himself up for the rest of the season. Um,
definitely.
but yeah, speaking of though, the two drivers that didn't really have a very good race, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you agree with me, Tsunoda and Perez.
Yeah. They're on my biggest losers list.
Yeah.
So biggest losers, obviously Bottas and Russell, but also Perez, Sonoda, and even Latifi, because I actually started paying a little bit of attention to Latifi. I thought, oh, I can't just always forget about him. But he did quite well in qualifying yesterday. Both Williams did, and then for him to end up out of the race through his own error, I think that's just a shame.
Yeah.
Um, Sonoda, little swearing person that he is, he couldn't maintain track limits and ended up just getting a black and white flag, which for me was a bit silly of him.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that just kind of shows how much of a rookie he is, really.
Mm,
But yeah, like he had a few mishaps today, like the spinning off and like obviously exceeding track limits. I just feel like the rookie in him kind of came out today. Obviously in comparison to his race last week, or sorry, a few weeks ago, he wasn't really on par with himself.
Yeah.
But again, you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's new to this formula. He's still kind of in the very early stages of like figuring out the car and whatever. So, I guess we'll just.
Do you think it's the car though, or do you think it's the personality? Because he's a hothead, and hotheads push hard. We see it all the time in Mazepin, aka Mazepin, and it's just like the harder you push these cars when they aren't the best cars on track, you're going to inevitably make these mistakes. And if you're not doing something as simple as respecting track limits, that's your own problem, really.
Yeah, but again, I think that's the rookie within him coming out, because he's just like, let me just get on and do it. Like, for example, going back to Max Verstappen, in the early stages of his career, he was always making mistakes and always kind of screwing up at really stupid points where you'd be watching back and you'd be like, how did you manage to screw that up so badly? But it's because he was just young and a hothead and just like, let me get out there and race. I don't really care what anyone else is doing, or let me just do my thing. So again, I think it just goes back to how inexperienced these drivers are.
Yeah.
And I think Yuki, like, it's a shame because obviously he had such a great first race, but let's just see how he gets on. He's got Gasly as a teammate, and Gasly, as we all know, has our biggest respect. So it'll be interesting to see how he kind of gets on. But yeah, I do think it was a bit silly of him today to.
Definitely. And I think just overall a shame for Bottas and Russell. Bottas right now can't be in the position of losing. He just can't. Like, I don't think he can take it mentally, and I think he needs to show his skill. He needs to show his skill on track, not to make little mistakes where somebody could even interpret that he might be barging someone off the track or anything like that. He can't make those kind of mistakes, because you should be fighting for a world championship, or at the very least supporting the constructors championship and supporting your teammate to get the world championship. But you're eighth and you're like fighting with a Williams. That, to me, that doesn't make any sense.
I know. So that literally has had me questioning. In fact, Bottas's performance all weekend really has had me questioning his future at Mercedes. And obviously when we saw Toto kind of shaking his head and whatever, I was just like, what does this actually mean for Valtteri? Because I don't know. I don't think he's championship material. Do you?
I don't. And I think if he struggles this year, I don't think he'd struggle for a ride. I think there's other teams that would take him on. It would never be like Ferrari or Red Bull. It's not going to be a world-class team or a championship class team, because they're all world-class. But I think if he struggles this year, like skillfully, it's going to be a massive blow to him mentally. And then what he will need to do is probably take some time away from Formula One for a while and go and do something else. He seems to like the mountains, maybe do some skiing, some sauna stuff, and then come back maybe in a few years. But yeah, he's gonna struggle this year if he doesn't get on top of it soon.
I agree. And it's a shame because obviously thinking back to like obviously Drive to Survive, where we saw a bit of Bottas speaking about his like season last year and whatever, he obviously wants it, but he just doesn't seem to be able to fight for it. And he just, I don't know, I just feel like he's not showing the fact that he's racing for the top team in the sport at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think that's the difference between him and Hamilton, because Hamilton had a bad race. Hamilton, I don't even think Bottas really had a bad race. That was the weird thing. Like, he just ended up where he ended up, and he didn't even really he didn't spin off. He didn't like do any of that kind of stuff. It was until he crashed. Yeah. So I feel like Hamilton had a bad race, made the best of it, had a bit of luck on his side, but then actually like battled. And they say you can't overtake at Imola. Hamilton's like, I've got a Mercedes, of course I can overtake him at Imola. And he's just, driving up alongside other cars.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just going to be really interesting to see how this season kind of pans out for Bottas. But
Yeah.
I, for one, don't really have high hopes for him, which, I mean, I hate to say it, but
Well, okay, so I think that kind of covers pretty much all of my bits that I've got. Man of the race, driver of the race.
Lando Norris.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
I think he did just such a superb job
he
to
deserves
get
it.
himself up
I
there.
think.
Definitely deserves it.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think about Imola and all of the crazy events that have happened.
So just like, comment, subscribe as you normally would, share this video, and obviously check us out on Twitter and Instagram. I usually live tweet every race on our Twitter, so that's On The Chicane. And obviously our Instagram is full of all sorts of stuff, so check us out at On The Chicane. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with our Portimao overview, where we'll be going through whatever happens there. But yeah, I'm quite looking forward to that track. I liked Portimao last year, so I think it'll be good this time.
Yeah, I think Portimao was one of my favorite new old races that they brought back. So I'm interested in seeing what happens next time. Whether or not Red Bull can maintain this dominance that they've come out of the paddock strong with, and see where we end up.
Yeah, I guess we'll wait and see.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. See you
Bye.
soon.